They slipped. That was the first sign that the night was about to turn inside out. Elena didn't even feel it leave her fingers. 1 second, she was weaving through the packed ballroom with practiced grace. The next, her whole body lurched forward as champagne glasses clattered and a streak of golden liquid splashed across the polished marble floor. Gasps burst around her like popping bulbs. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry," she whispered. Scrambling to steady the tray, her heart hammering against her ribs, her voice trembled, barely audible beneath the violin quartet, playing in the background and the low murmur of London's elite gathered at the Harrington estate. "Elena, watch what you're doing," her supervisor hissed under her breath, shooting her a glare so sharp it could slice through glass. "This is the winter ball, not your local pub shift." Elena swallowed hard, nodding even though humiliation burned her cheeks. She forced her hands to stop shaking and stepped backward, praying, "Asterisk, please let that be the worst thing that happens tonight." But fate had a wicked sense of humor. As she turned to walk away, the hem of her simple black dress brushed too close to the sculpted ice centerpiece, a swan carved in exquisite detail, and caught on the thin, jagged edge of its wing. She felt the tug, then the tear. A single ripping sound pierced the hall. Her eyes widened in horror. She looked down and saw a jagged seam running dangerously high up the side of her dress. The room froze. A dozen pairs of eyes snapped toward her. A dozen phones lifted instinctively. Even the violinist faltered. "Oh, God, no," she breathed, helpless. Flashes fired in rapid succession. There she stood, exposed, mortified, trapped under the weight of judgments sharper than the ice that had sliced her dress. In the glittering sea of designer gowns and aristocratic power, she became prey, something to gossip about, to ridicule, to post. "Is she serious?" someone whispered loudly. "Desperate for attention, isn't she? Pathetic." The voices stabbed at her, each one a blow she couldn't shield herself from. She felt her knees weaken. But then a shadow moved. A tall figure stepped between her and the crowd, blocking the cameras. A warm fabric brushed against her shoulders, heavy, expensive, smelling faintly of cedar and winter cologne. She looked up and found herself staring into pale gray eyes that didn't seem cold tonight, but strangely attentive. Adrian Rothwell didn't say a word to the crowd. He simply draped his charcoal overcoat around her, pulling it close to hide the torn dress from the lingering flashes. "You're all right," he told her quietly. His voice had a calm steadiness that grounded her instantly. "Don't move." She nodded, unable to speak. Who in the world didn't know Adrian Rothwell? The man whose family name carried enough weight to silence a room. A man known for ruthless corporate precision, not acts of mercy. Yet here he was, Lady Vivian Harrington, gliding across the ballroom like a swan dipped in diamonds, shot forward with a look that blended shock and irritation. Her lips tightened when she saw her cousin's coat wrapped protectively around a catering staffer. "Adrian, darling," she said through a brittle smile, "what exactly is happening here? The photographers are—" "Handled," he cut in, his tone cool but final. One glance from him was enough to send the nearest paparazzi lowering their cameras. Vivian turned her gaze to Elena, her expression twisting. "Young lady, you're causing quite a disturbance. Please remove yourself from the ballroom immediately. Honestly, how unprofessional." Elena opened her mouth, unable to find breath, much less words. "I'll take her," Adrian said. Vivian blinked. "You?" He didn't entertain further questions. His hand gently touched Elena's elbow, not possessive, not controlling, just steadying her as though she were something fragile he wasn't willing to see destroyed in front of hundreds of eyes. They moved through the whispering crowd. Some stared with sympathy, others with malice, most with hungry interest at the unexpected pairing. Elena could feel her humiliation spreading like wildfire with every step. In the dim corridor just outside the ballroom, Elena finally found her voice. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cause a scene. I didn't see the ice sculpture edge, and then—" "You don't need to explain anything to me," Adrian said, offering a small nod to the two security guards who approached. "Make sure Miss Ward gets home safely." Miss Ward. He knew her name. That alone shocked her. "Please," she whispered, lifting her eyes to him. "Please don't make a fuss. I can leave on my own." "It's not a fuss," he replied gently. "It's safety." She opened her mouth to argue, but the truth was she didn't trust her legs not to give out. She felt the sting behind her eyelids and blinked hard to keep the tears from falling. "I didn't want to embarrass anyone," she said softly, voice cracking. "I swear I didn't." Adrian's expression softened just a fraction. "I know." Those two words nearly undid her. The security guards waited, but Elena hesitated, still wrapped in Adrian's coat. It was warm, heavy, almost like a shield against everything she couldn't fight. "I'll return this," she said weakly, clutching at the lapels. "You can give it back another time," he replied, somewhat unexpectedly. "Tonight is not the night for worrying about coats." She stared at him, bewildered. Why was he being kind? Why was he, of all people, looking at her like she wasn't invisible? But then his phone buzzed sharply and his expression darkened. From inside the ballroom, a faint cheer rose, mingled with the sound of clinking glasses. Clearly, the world had already moved on from her humiliation. The moment passed. Adrian nodded once more to security and then turned and stepped back through the doors, vanishing behind the curtain of aristocratic luxury as though he'd never been there at all. Helena stood there alone in his coat, trembling. Outside, the cold London air bit against her exposed legs as the security guards escorted her down the Harrington Estates marble steps. She had intended to take the tube home, but the guards insisted on calling a cab. She didn't argue. She was too tired, too shaken, too humiliated. As the cab drove through the glittering London streets, Elena's phone vibrated nonstop. She made the mistake of opening one notification, then another. A trending video. A close-up shot of her torn dress. A freeze frame of Adrian wrapping his coat around her. Comments flooded in. She planned it. Gold digger alert. Pathetic staff looking for attention. Who is she? This is the girl they're all talking about. Her chest tightened. Her breath hitched. She closed the phone with shaking fingers before the tears finally spilled. By the time the cab reached her small Brixton flat, she was barely holding herself together. She took Adrian's coat off slowly, clutching it for warmth one last time before hanging it over her arm. Inside, the lights were still on. Her grandmother, frail but awake, called from the living room. "Elena, love? You're home late." Elena forced her voice steady. "Yeah. Long night." She hid her torn dress behind the door, swallowing her shame, knowing she couldn't burden her grandmother with the truth. Later, when she lay in bed, sleepless, the echo of Adrian's voice drifted through her mind. "You're all right." But she wasn't. And by morning, the whole city would know her face. Edward pushed the sitting room door open with a quiet gentleness that almost made Claire flinch. She sat stiffly on the edge of an armchair, twisting her fingers together, her face blotchy from tears she'd clearly fought hard to keep hidden. The sight of her like that hit him harder than he expected. He closed the door behind him. "Claire, look at me, please." She didn't. Her voice was small. "I'm sorry. I ruined your evening. I shouldn't have been there." "You didn't ruin anything," Edward said firmly, taking a seat opposite her. What happened to you was humiliating and cruel, but none of it was your fault." She lifted her eyes then, red-rimmed, shining, and something in his chest tightened painfully. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Everyone at that ball knew each other. They're noble families, big business names, government people. I don't belong anywhere near them. They look at girls like me and see—" "Stop." His voice wasn't loud, but the command in it made her words break off. "You think I pulled you out of that crowd because I pitied you? Or because you didn't belong? Claire, I brought you here because those people forgot their humanity. I didn't." Her breath shuddered. "People filmed it, didn't they?" "Yes," he admitted. "Some did." She closed her eyes in torment. "It's going to be everywhere tomorrow. I'll never be able to step into a shop again without people whispering. My manager will fire me for bringing attention I didn't ask for. My mum will think I embarrassed the whole family." Edward leaned forward. "Claire, listen to me. I will not let anyone destroy you over this. Whatever happens, I'll handle it." Her laugh was shaky. "Why? Why do you even care? You don't know me." "I'm trying to," he said quietly. "Let me." She swallowed, saying nothing. "Tell me what you're afraid of most," he said. "That this will define me," she whispered, voice cracking. "That this moment, this stupid tear, this dress, this humiliation, will be the only thing people ever see. That I'll be that girl in the viral video, not anyone real." Edward stood and extended a hand. "Come with me." She hesitated. "Where?" "You'll see." She reluctantly took his hand, and he led her down the hallway to a small gallery room lined with portraits, grand paintings of stone-jawed dukes and powdered viscountesses hung in ornate gold frames. He stopped in front of a portrait of a woman in a sapphire gown, her expression both fierce and sorrowful. "This," he said softly, "is Lady Catherine Wolvington, my great-grandmother." Claire blinked, confused. "She looks strong." "She was," Edward replied. "She married into this family at 21 from nothing. Her mother was a seamstress. She came from the exact kind of London neighborhood people at that ball pretend doesn't exist." Claire looked at the painted woman again, something flickering in her expression. "What happened to her?" "She became one of the most influential women in English society. Charities, reforms, sponsorships that saved thousands of girls who had no chances. But when she first arrived in the aristocracy, they mocked her, tried to humiliate her, same way they did to you." Claire's lips parted slightly in disbelief. "My grandfather told me she never forgot how that felt. She told him that the worst shame wasn't hers, it was theirs, for treating someone with cruelty to protect their fragile pride." Edward turned to Claire. "You faced the same kind of cruelty tonight. But you stood there. You didn't run away. That's strength, Claire, not weakness." She stared at the portrait, breathing shakily, as if imagining herself in that ballroom again. "I didn't feel strong," she whispered. "That's often what strength feels like," he replied. "Terrifying." Her shoulders lowered a little, not relaxed, but no longer rigid. Edward guided her out of the gallery, back toward the living room. She paused near the window and looked out at the lights of London, the endless stretch of them, glittering like 1,000 possibilities she'd never dared to imagine. "Do you want to go home?" he asked gently. Claire closed her eyes for a moment. "No, if I go home, I'll just break down. And I don't want my mum to see me like this. She'll worry." "Then stay here for tonight," Edward said. "I'll have a guest room prepared. You'll be safe." "I don't want to be a burden," she murmured. "You're not," he said more firmly than he expected. "You're human. You're allowed to need comfort." She gave him a small nod, and for the first time, she looked at him without fear. without apology. He stepped out to speak to the house staff, and Claire lingered at the window, hugging herself. The emotional storm still raged inside her, but she felt something else now, something she hadn't felt in hours. A faint flicker of relief. A soft knock sounded behind her. She turned to see Edward's younger sister, Amelia Harrington, leaning in the doorway. She was elegant in an understated way, loose cream blouse, navy trousers, hair tied back. She carried a small tray with 2 mugs. "I brought tea," Amelia said gently. "Chamomile. It settles the nerves." Claire stared, surprised. "Oh, thank you. You really don't need to be, involved. I know I'm just—" "A guest," Amelia interrupted with a warm firmness. "And anyone my brother brings home deserves kindness." Claire took the mug, her hands trembling slightly. "I saw what happened at the ball," Amelia said softly. "People are vile when they're bored and full of champagne. But you handled yourself with more dignity than they deserved." Claire swallowed. "I didn't feel dignified. I felt like a joke." Amelia shook her head. "No joke stands tall after being pushed. You did." Claire felt tears threaten again, but she blinked them back. Amelia sat beside her on the sofa. "Edward can be overwhelming sometimes, but he means well. He doesn't protect people lightly. The fact that he stepped in like that, well, it's the most Harrington thing I've seen him do." "What do you mean?" Claire asked. "He sees things as they should be, not as they are," Amelia said. "And he always steps in when someone is wronged, even if society doesn't like it." Claire looked down at her tea. "He's been kind. Too kind, maybe." "Kindness isn't a limited resource here," Amelia said with a small smile. "Not in this house." Edward returned then, and Amelia excused herself, squeezing Claire's hand before leaving. "The guest room is ready," Edward said. "But you can stay here as long as you need." Claire nodded, gripping her mug. "Thank you, for everything. I don't know how to repay you." "You don't need to repay kindness," he murmured. "Just heal." She felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. But beneath that warmth, hidden deep, a quiet fear lingered, because kindness like his didn't appear without reason. And she didn't know why she mattered. Not yet. But she would soon. Very soon.
The night the thunder rolled over the Hale mansion, Victor Hale stood by the window watching his daughter, Lila, through the reflection in the glass. She sat in her wheelchair, staring at nothing. Her tiny hands rested on her knees, fingers still, eyes empty. There was a time when her laughter filled this house. Now, silence was the only sound that lived here. He turned away from the glass and whispered, "Good night, sweetheart," but she didn't reply. She never did anymore. The housekeeper closed the curtains behind him, but Victor couldn't stop looking. He hated how the mansion looked like a palace on the outside and a grave inside. Down the hall, the sound of a piano used to echo, his late wife, Evelyn, teaching Lila a song. But after the car accident that took Evelyn's life and left Lila paralyzed, the piano gathered dust, untouched for nearly a year. Victor walked to his study, past the walls lined with awards and photographs, proof of his wealth and success. None of it mattered now. He sat down, loosened his tie, and poured himself a glass of whiskey. "Sir," said Clara, the maid, hesitantly from the door, "Miss Lila hasn't eaten dinner again." Victor didn't look up. "Leave the tray by her door. I'll check on her later." "Yes, sir." When she left, Victor rubbed his temples. He was tired. Not from work, but from helplessness. The doctors had told him Lila might never walk again, but it was her silence that broke him most. He had built an empire with his hands but couldn't fix the one thing that mattered. The next morning, Lila was wheeled outside into the garden. The air smelled of rain. She watched a few sparrows fight over breadcrumbs, her face blank. Clara trimmed the flowers quietly, trying not to disturb her. From beyond the tall mansion gate, faint music drifted in, lively, rhythmic, playful. It didn't belong here among the roses and marble fountains. Who's that? Lila asked softly, her voice hoarse from disuse. Clara froze. It was the first time the child had spoken in weeks. I'm not sure, dear. Sounds like someone on the street. Lila turned toward the gate, curiosity flickering across her face for the first time. On the other side of the tall black iron bars stood a boy, maybe 12 or 13, thin and barefoot. His clothes were torn, but his smile was wide. He had a small Bluetooth speaker beside him, and he danced like the world was watching, though no one seemed to care. His name was Toby. Toby danced not for money, but for joy. His movements were wild, awkward, but full of life, like someone who had never forgotten how to dream even with an empty stomach. Lila's lips parted. Something deep inside her stirred. She hadn't seen anyone move like that since her mother used to dance around the kitchen, holding her hand. "Can we watch him?" she asked. Clara blinked, trying to hide her surprise. "Of course, dear." She wheeled Lila closer to the gate. Toby noticed them and grinned. "Hey there, little lady," he called out, waving. "You like dancing?" Lila hesitated. "I used to," she said quietly. "Well," he said, spinning and almost falling, "guess I'll dance extra hard for you then." He turned up the music and started again, his sneakers slapping against the wet pavement. He slipped once, laughed, and kept going. Lila giggled. Just a small, breathy sound, but it was enough to make Clara's eyes widen. That night, Victor walked into Lila's room. She was sitting by the window, smiling faintly. He froze in the doorway. "Something funny?" he asked. Lila shook her head, her eyes still glowing. "Just a boy. He danced outside today." Victor frowned. "A boy? He was really good, Daddy. He made me laugh." Victor's chest tightened. He hadn't heard her say that word *laugh* in months. "What boy?" "I don't know his name," she said. "But he said he'll come back tomorrow." Victor turned away, unsure how to feel. Hope wasn't something he allowed himself anymore. The next afternoon, Toby returned. Same place, same smile, different song. Lila waited by the gate, excitement trembling in her small hands. He danced harder this time, spinning, clapping, sliding across the cracked pavement. "You see that?" he shouted mid-move. "I call that the turbo twister." Lila burst into laughter, real laughter. Clara almost cried hearing it. But the joy didn't last long. The security guard, following orders to keep strangers away, rushed over. "Hey, kid! Move along. This isn't a playground." Toby stopped, panting. "I'm not hurting anyone." "Mr. Hale's orders," the guard barked. Lila's smile vanished. "No. Let him stay." The guard hesitated, unsure what to do. "What's going on here?" Victor's voice boomed from behind. He was walking down the path, phone in hand, irritation on his face. When he saw the boy, his jaw tightened. "Who is this?" Lila's hands gripped her wheelchair. "He's my friend," she said, her voice trembling. Victor looked at Toby, barefoot, dirty, breathing hard. "You're trespassing." "I'm just dancing, sir," Toby said. She was watching. "I didn't mean no trouble." "Leave," Victor ordered. Lila's eyes filled with tears. "Daddy, please, he makes me happy." "Enough, Lila," he said sharply. He turned to the guard. "Make sure he doesn't come back." Toby picked up his little speaker, shoulders low. "Sorry, miss," he said softly to Lila. "Didn't mean to get you in trouble." Lila reached out, but he was already gone. That night, she didn't eat. She didn't talk. She just stared at the empty gate through her window. Victor sat at his desk, staring at the untouched meal on his plate. He had thought he was protecting her from strangers, from the world, but now he wasn't sure. He went to her room quietly. "Lila?" She didn't look at him. "You shouldn't have sent him away." He sighed. He doesn't belong here. Her voice was small but sharp. Then maybe I don't either. Victor froze. The words hit him harder than any business failure ever could. He left her room and stood in the hallway, staring at the floor. For the first time, he wondered if his daughter was slipping away not because of her injury, but because he had built walls too high for joy to enter.
The city had awakened, buzzing with the familiar hum of London gossip when Claire stepped out into the street. She held Edward's coat tightly around her chest tight with nerves. The video had exploded online overnight. Every notification on her phone was a dagger, every comment a whisper of judgment. People had called her reckless, accused her of attention-seeking, mocked her relentlessly. But she didn't feel small anymore. Not entirely. Edward walked beside her, tall and imposing in his tailored overcoat, yet somehow comforting in his silent presence. They reached the cab waiting at the curb. She hesitated before opening the door. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered, voice trembling. You can, he said simply. And you won't be alone. The cab drove through the city streets, past the flashing lights of cameras and the faint murmur of reporters gathering outside the Harrington estate. The closer they got to the office, the more the world seemed to press down on her. Critics waiting, whispers sharpening, her face already splashed across feeds and blogs. When they arrived at the Rothwell Group Tower, Edward led her through a private entrance. Inside, the building was calm, silent, and removed from the chaos outside. He gestured to a small office space waiting for her. Papers were neatly stacked, a computer humming quietly, and a nameplate that read, *Claire Ward, receptionist. Claire stared at it, mouth slightly agape. You did this? Edward nodded. It's not a favor, it's an opportunity, and you've earned it. Not because of last night, because of who you are. She shook her head, emotions tumbling over each other. But people will talk. They'll say, I got this because of you. They'll say it's scandalous. Let them, he said firmly. Their opinion doesn't define you. She wanted to believe him. She tried closing her eyes and breathing deeply, reminding herself of the warmth of the conservatory, of the snow falling on the terrace, of his voice steadying her trembling heart. She wanted to believe. The first week at the Rothwell Group was surreal. Colleagues whispered, some openly stared, and gossip inevitably trickled into her inbox. But with Edward's quiet interventions and Amelia's gentle encouragement, she began to feel like herself again. A small seed of confidence had been planted, nurtured by someone who truly saw her. Then came the tabloid storm. A series of photos, cropped and angled to suggest something scandalous between her and Edward, appeared in every online publication, every celebrity gossip blog, every trending news segment. Headlines screamed, Rothwell heiress and the catering girl, London's new scandal. Claire felt her stomach twist violently. She wanted to run, to hide, to escape London altogether. Her mind raced with thoughts of her grandmother, of her modest flat in Brixton, of the life she had always known. But Edward found her in the office lounge before she could make any impulsive decision. Claire, he said gently, catching her arm, you can't run. Not from this, not from yourself. I can't take it, she whispered. They're relentless. It's everywhere. Edward's gaze softened, yet hardened with determination. Then we face it together. I'll handle them. I'll handle anyone who tries to twist this into shame. But you have to stand with me. Her tears came then, hot and unrestrained, but he didn't flinch. He let her cry, his presence a steady anchor as the city's judgment swirled around her. Later that afternoon, Edward called an emergency press conference. Cameras filled the room, flashes stabbing like tiny knives, but he stood at the podium with a composure that steadied everyone in the room. He spoke slowly, deliberately, his voice clear. "This morning I am here to clarify an incident that has unnecessarily involved Miss Claire Ward. She is not a scandal. She is not a distraction. She is a young woman who showed courage in the face of humiliation. She is deserving of respect, dignity, and opportunity. Any attempts to malign her character are inaccurate and unfair. She did nothing wrong, and I take full responsibility for ensuring she is treated fairly." Claire watched from a quiet office, her hands trembling. Her heart raced, but she felt a wave of relief, hope, and gratitude. The words were stronger than any apology she could have hoped to receive. They were a shield against the world's cruelty, a public declaration of her worth. The following days saw a dramatic shift. Tabloids scrambled to report Edward's defense, many softening their tones, others spinning narratives that emphasized her resilience rather than scandal. Online harassment diminished, replaced by messages of support and admiration. Claire walked through the city streets again, this time with her head held a little higher. She passed cafes where she had imagined people whispering and smiling faintly, nodding at those who treated her with newfound respect. The sensation of being seen, not for a viral moment, not for her humiliation, but for herself, was intoxicating. Weeks later, Claire attended private dinner on the rooftop terrace of the Harrington estate. The city lights stretched endlessly beneath them, a glittering sea of possibility. She wore a dress she had designed herself, modest yet elegant, stitched with care and pride. Edward waited, leaning casually against the terrace railing. When she approached, he smiled genuinely and without pretense. "You look incredible," he said softly. Claire felt warmth creep into her chest. I did it myself," she admitted. "A little stitching, a lot of mistakes, and a lot of patience." He laughed, low and genuine. "Much like life. Some mistakes, some patience, but ultimately we create what we can." They stood side by side, looking over London, the cool wind brushing their faces. For the first time in months, Claire felt free from shame, free from judgment, free to exist without apology. "I never imagined I'd be here," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Neither did I," Edward replied. "But I'm glad you are." She glanced at him, meeting his eyes, and in that moment the barriers of class, gossip, and fear fell away. For the first time, she saw him as a person, not a corporate titan. He saw her as more than the girl in the viral video. "You're not just someone to save," he said softly. "You're someone I wanted to see." Claire's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. "And you're not just a businessman with a coat," she teased lightly, feeling the tension between them ease. "You're someone who actually sees me." He laughed quietly, the sound blending with the soft murmur of the city below. "Then we've discovered something rare, haven't we?" Claire nodded, feeling the warmth in her chest grow, steady and strong. She no longer felt invisible, and for the first time, the future didn't seem terrifying. It seemed possible. They walked back toward the small private dining area, hand in hand, unhurried, unafraid, leaving behind the shadows of scandal and cruelty. London stretched beneath them, vast and glittering, a city that had once seemed too harsh to inhabit, now a place of new beginnings. Claire had survived the shame, the whispers, the viral chaos. She had found courage, resilience, and dignity. And most importantly, she had found someone who saw her fully, not as a viral moment, not as a scandal, but as a person worthy of respect and care. As the evening wore on, she laughed quietly at a shared joke, the sound light and unburdened. Edward's eyes met hers, a quiet acknowledgement of everything they had both endured. In that simple glance, there was gratitude, understanding, and the gentle promise of hope. The world might still gossip, still judge, still try to define her by a single night. But Claire had reclaimed herself. She had walked through the fire of humiliation and emerged stronger, wiser, and infinitely more certain of her own worth. The city lights shimmered below, the stars hidden behind the London haze, but she didn't need them. She had found her own light, one that no scandal, no gossip, no viral moment could ever dim. And for the first time in her life, she felt entirely wonderfully seen.